Hi 7th graders, and welcome to Monday, November 9th's video on noun clauses. We are going to be looking at page 131, and we are going to begin with identifying noun clauses, and then on Wednesday we will actually be looking at how to diagram them. Noun clauses obviously are going to be groups of words, and we have moved away from having one word be our subject or one word be our verb or one word be our direct object into having whole groups of words take on this function. So let's first begin by looking at the gray box on page 131. So if you don't have this out, I'm actually taking most of my examples and referring to things in the book, so make sure you get your green textbook out. And you will notice in the gray box that the noun clause has to be dependent. So it cannot be an independent clause. It will be dependent. That means it will be in a complex sentence. So those are the first two rules to remember. The noun clause can come any place in the sentence where a noun can be. It can come as the subject, it can come as the direct object, or it can come as the predicate nominative. So you always have to look in those places to see if you actually have a noun clause. But remember, it will always be dependent and it will always be in a complex sentence. Now let's review briefly the differences between a clause and a phrase. Remember, a clause has a subject and a verb within the group of words. So if we have a group of 5 or 6 words and you think it's a clause, it must have a subject and a verb, with that subject doing something. A phrase is not going to have both of those. It could have a noun in it, it could have a word that looks like an action word in it, but it will not have both. Most of the phrases that you're going to see in your sentences are going to be prepositional phrases. And so I would encourage you to have that prepositional list, or the list of prepositional words, so that you can easily identify them and get them out of your line of vision as you're trying to identify what things are doing in the sentences. So noun clauses, it's still a group of words that will have a subject and a verb in it. And as we look further at those, let's take a look at page 131, and we're going to look at the bottom of that page at one of the sentences they give us. And the sentence is, whoever works diligently should accomplish a good job. Now, if you were in 3rd grade, we would be classifying that, so I would be asking you some questions. And my first question would be, who should accomplish a good job? Well, you might want to say to me, whoever. Okay, let's say that. Whoever should accomplish a good job. Well, that doesn't really make sense. I need more. Now, I could also say whoever works should accomplish a good job. Well, I know a lot of people who work who do not do a good job. So I really need all 3 of these words. Whoever works diligently should accomplish a good job. So this whole group of words will be your subject. So let's classify. If we label it like we were in 3rd grade, who should accomplish? Well, whoever works diligently. I've underlined all 3 words because all 3 words together are the subject. Then I'm going to say, what is going to happen when we work diligently? Well, we should accomplish. So both of these, helping verb and verb, will come under our verbs category. And then should accomplish what? Direct object. So sometimes it helps to actually, if you've not pulled out your colored pencils yet, if you've not pulled out your crayons, if you prefer those, or your markers, now would be a good time. We will consistently be using the colored pencils in writing, so have them available for working on your clauses as well, because sometimes if you can either classify in color or find clauses in colors that may help you. Okay, so let's remember a few things. Remember, you can have a subject that has multiple words. It is allowed. You are no longer looking for just one word, but you can have a whole bunch of words that come in to be your subject. The second thing you must remember is that a clause, this particular noun clause, must be dependent, meaning that there will be an independent clause with it in the sentence, making it complex. Now, in order to help you find them a little bit more easily, here are some words that commonly introduce the noun clauses, and these are on page 132. So this might be something that you want to put on a little index card, or you might want to put in your notes, because you can keep this out in front of you on a test. But here are a whole bunch of words: how, wherever, that, whom, why, when, what, whose, whether, whenever, whatever, whoever, where, if, and who. Now, we have seen who, which clauses before, and we know that they're dependent. And so it should make sense as we move into understanding the grammar of this, that you're thinking, oh yeah, I'm pretty familiar with these. So make sure that you note these words. Now, you could even print out this slide. I will post the actual PowerPoint on Sycamore, so you can print it out if you want it. But, of course, in the English language, there's always going to be what I call the confusion alert. Now, it gets confusing when you look at your whole sentence. Whoever works diligently is our little noun clause, and it comes as the subject. But this whole sentence is the independent clause. So our little noun clause is hiding in the big independent clause. So this is where the confusion comes in. You have to remember that the noun clause might be the subject, but it has a subject and a verb, but it's the subject for the big one. Super confusing, and I'm hoping that when we diagram these on Wednesday, that it will be a little easier to understand. But there are some tests that help us to decide whether this is a noun clause or some other adjective or adverb clause. So if you will look at page 133, it gives us 3 tests to help us figure out if this is a noun clause doing a noun job. And let's review, what are the noun jobs? Subjects, predicate nominatives, direct objects. There's an indirect object that can be a noun or an object of the preposition. A bunch of places where nouns can show up. And your noun clauses can do most of those jobs, not all of them. But the first test, if you look on page 133, it says, does the clause name a person, place, thing, or idea? So let's look at the example number 1. It says, I did not hear when Mr. Smith drove in. Well, first of all, I like to answer the question, I did not hear what? Well, I did not hear when Mr. Smith drove in. So I need that whole group. So I can answer the what question. It's kind of an idea. It's not a person, it's not a place, but it is kind of a thing. I did not hear what? I did not hear when Mr. Smith drove in. Now the second test, does the clause serve a noun function? Well, I've already answered that for you because I asked, I did not hear what? And I determined that that was a direct object. And then the final test is on page 134. It says, is it sensible to replace the clause with a pronoun? So let's look at that same sentence. I did not hear when Mr. Smith drove in. I could say I did not hear him. I did not hear it. And those do make sense. So if you use these 3 tests, then that can often help you figure out if you've got a noun clause. So let's go back and review just a second. I want to review the noun clause rules. It is dependent and it's in a complex sentence. It can be the subject, can be the direct object, and it can be the predicate nominative. So let's go look at your class practice. So if you haven't gotten your book out, get your book out, and you are going to be looking at the class practice, which is on page 134. And what I would like for you to do is class practice A. We're going to start with that. And it says these sentences contain noun clauses used as direct objects. So you're only looking for direct objects. Read the skeleton and then read the noun clause. So you are going to, what you're going to write down here is the main independent clause skeleton, and you are also going to write down the dependent clause. So you're going to do that for all 4 of them, and then we're going to come back and I'll give you the answers. So hit pause, and then come back and we'll do the answers. Okay, if you're back, I'm assuming you did the 4 that where noun clauses are being used as direct objects. So the first one, today we discovered where the old cabin had been located. Well, if I was looking at my list of introduction words back further in the PowerPoint, I would have realized that where is one of those words. So I would underline where the old cabin had been located, because that's the dependent clause. Cabin had been located is the skeleton. You didn't have to, I don't know, if you didn't write that down, that's fine. But the main clause, the independent clause of the whole big sentence, is we discovered. So you should write we discovered, that's the big whole main idea, but then the little dependent clause is where the old cabin had been located. Number 2, Paul certainly should know who the speaker is. Well, again, I'm going to look for those introduction words. Remember those all the way back there? In fact, I'll keep those up for you. And who is one of those? So I am going to underline who the speaker is. Now, the main subject and verb of the whole big clause is Paul should know. But then the little dependent noun clause is going to be speaker is. Now, I know sometimes I've told you that who can be, but it's not the speaker, right? Or it's not the subject right now. Speaker is the subject verb. Number 3, the man said, can you give me directions to Fanitsburg? And so we need to look and see if there are any of our introduction words. Well, I don't see any, so that's going to make it harder. But in a quote, the main clause is going to be man said. So anytime you have your mom said, or the man said, or dad said, that's the main clause. So here, man said is the main clause. And the question is the dependent. Can you give me directions to Fanitsburg? And so you would underline that as the dependent clause. You can give is the subject verb. And then the number 4, did you see if the cows have come in front? Excuse me, let me read it again. Did you see if the cows have come in from the meadow? So here's a question again, and those questions with the word orders all mixed up are sometimes confusing. But our main clause is you did see, and here's the if. So remember, if is one of our intro words. If the cows have come in from the meadow, and cows have come is the subject verb for that. All right, now take a look at B. It says these sentences contain noun clauses used as predicate nominatives. Read the skeleton of the main clause and then read the noun clause. So you're going to write the main skeleton, and the noun clause. And then I want you to go ahead and do C as well, and there are 4 of those. So go to the next page for that last one. So do B and C. Keep these words in front of you so that you can look at them. And go ahead and hit pause, and then come back when you are finished. Okay, if you have come back, then I'm going to assume that you're ready to go. So in B, the book is what we need. The main clause is book is. What we need. Well, here is our what. So we would underline what we need, and we need is the subject verb. The leader should be whoever knows the way through these woods. The main clause is leader should be. Here's our whoever. In here, it's an intro word, whoever knows the way through these woods. And the subject and verb is whoever knows. Number 3, the happiest place in life is wherever God wants us. The main is place is, and here is wherever, right up here, wherever God wants us. And God wants is the subject verb. And the last one, the question is whether the bridge will be safe to cross. Question is the main subject verb. Whether the bridge will be safe to cross. Here's our whether. And bridge will be safe is the subject and verb. Okay, moving on to C. Whose horses are running around the neighborhood remains a mystery. Now, they want us to find the subjects. So here we go. Here's our word, whose. Whose horses are running around the neighborhood. That whole big group of words is your subject. The verb is remains. So if you underlined whose horses are running around the neighborhood, you were right. Number 2 is whoever stacked this wood did a careful job. Whoever stacked the wood, the whole big clause, and whoever is one of our words. Whoever stacked is the subject verb. And then for the big main clause, whoever stacked this wood did a careful job. Number 3, how the fire started has been the subject of an extensive investigation. Here's the word how. How, very first one. How the fire started. That whole big group of words. Has been is the verb. Then the last one, that the reformers compromised for political reasons disappointed the Anabaptists. And the word that right here, that the reformers compromised is the dependent clause. Well, and I guess you can put in there for political reasons if you wanted to, but that's a prepositional phrase that's just joining in. And then disappointed is the verb. Now, I'm sure you're a little bit confused on some of these, but keep this slide front and center. And like I said, I will post this as a document on Documents for our classroom. If you keep that front and center, I think you'll be able to find your noun clauses and underline them. But just remember, if you have that dependent clause and an independent clause, you have 2 subjects and verbs vying for that real action in the whole sentence. So do the best that you can on the homework, and if you have questions, make sure you circle the problems that you have questions with and bring those to class on Wednesday. Now, if you've worked the whole way through this video, because it's been a long one, almost 20 minutes, and you did the class practice exercises, completed those, then bring your sheet in to me on Wednesday, and I might have some candy surprises for you if you like candy. If you don't, maybe I'll have some other surprises. We'll see. So anyway, that's it, and I will see you on Wednesday.